SicEm365 Radio.
All right, we're bringing it back to the Petty Clinic Low T Bear Den. Brett Ciancia from Pick 6 Previews is joining us. He is a Heisman voter here to talk about the Heisman that will be awarded tonight. Again, as we just talked about, breaking news that Kim Mulkey has tested positive for COVID-19. She obviously is in fine condition as of right now. She just tweeted out a statement. And our thoughts go up with her and the entire program. The game against UConn Thursday night is canceled. But for right now, and as more information for that comes in, we'll give you later. For now, we'll take it over to the national scale where the Heisman will be given out tonight. Brett, welcome on to the show, and we're excited to have you. It's a big, big day in college sports.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. It's been a crazy season. I'm sure we're tired of hearing that, but one last step will be the Heisman Trophy tonight. First time we've seen it virtual in decades. So, I'm just glad we got a season in and everyone stayed relatively healthy. We got majority of the games played. We're going to crown a Heisman and crown a national champion.
So, Brett, far and away, you have to be one of the youngest Heisman voters, and congratulations for that. As a young person in sports media myself, it's good to know that we can pave a way. And so for you to be a Heisman voter and to have a say in who wins the nation's most prestigious trophy in college athletics, that's a big deal. How did that happen for you, Brett, before we get into how you assess these Heisman candidates this year?
Yeah, thanks so much for that praise. I appreciate that. It's the ultimate honor in college football media. I don't take it lightly. So a little bit about myself. I launched Pick 6 Previews as a college football preview magazine and book back in 2012. And over those 9 seasons now, we've been graded the most accurate Power 5 BCS predictor in the country. That's not me saying it. That's Stats and Accuracy that grades these things, all these publications and magazines you see on newsstands. So 9 years straight, number one. And that pulse on the game. I go all 65 Power 5 teams. I write them all myself and research them, hundreds of hours of film study and calling coaches and listening to local media and radio like this one, and then getting my thoughts down on paper every year. So, it was the ultimate honor. I'm representing Pennsylvania. That's where I'm based out of, but I cover all 65 Power 5 teams.
So, Brett, when you look at the field this season, and what I want to get into before we go individual player by player, it's what has the Heisman Trophy become? Is it the best player in college sports, in college football, I should say, or is it the best player on a competitive contender?
Well, there's 840 voters, and I think if you ask them all, you get 840 different answers, and that's kind of the beauty to it. It's very subjective. There's no exact formula, and I think it was designed that way on purpose. You look at other awards in their descriptions, it'll say, best interior lineman or very specific titles like that. This one, you get your ballot, it says just the most outstanding player in college football. So that's open to interpretation. I know in the past, and we still try and emulate this, but you try and get good character in there too. You want to have a good, well-rounded student athlete that excels on the field and off, leadership qualities. But then, of course, obviously the on-field performance, the stats, the wins, the big moments, the highlight plays, everything factors into it. And, it's rare to be a national guy voting on it. Most guys are beat writers that do excellent work covering one program or one conference and region. So from my point of view, I'm digging in, on a national level. I'm watching all these games each week and reruns and condensed games and highlights and running my numbers. So it was pretty extensive. This year, I will say, was a lot more wide open than last year. And in fact, I don't know who it's going to be announced tonight. I think it's going to be a fascinating race.
So when it comes to tonight's race, and I think it will too, Davonte Smith is the obvious favorite. Mac Jones behind him in the odds, Trevor Lawrence and Kyle Trask. So one of the things that we talked about on the show earlier, if Trevor Lawrence plays in more ball games, if he has more opportunities to hit the field this season, I've got him at much, much better odds to win the Heisman. I think that's obvious. That's almost objective. And for Kyle Trask, say Kyle Trask wins 2 more games and gets his team to the playoff, I think Kyle Trask has much better odds as well. So when you look at those 2 guys, obviously you can't give where you ranked your 4 or who you voted for, but with Trevor Lawrence and Kyle Trask, the 2 bottom guys in the odds, what do you see from them, and were those things, the lack of games and the lack of success, do those play into why those guys don't have better odds?
Well, 4 outstanding candidates on your ballot. You get to list your top 3. So you're selecting 3 guys, first, second, third. Quick on Kyle Trask, an incredible passing season. He broke Joe Burrow's per game averages in passing. 4 touchdowns a game in the regular season and conference championship. That's on pace, the best we've seen in college football since Colt Brennan in Hawaii. So he was historic throwing the ball. I think, a couple losses might have hurt him, but to the same degree, when you look at the surrounding cast he's got, it's not as perfect as what Mac Jones has at Alabama and what Trevor Lawrence has at Clemson. His offensive line was a bit shaky, not much of a run game at all, so teams knew they were throwing. So that kind of is a pro and con if you look at it either way. With Lawrence, I agree the 2 games out hurt his stats and numbers, but the good thing for him is he had a chance to avenge that Notre Dame absence, and he really put on his best performance of the season against Notre Dame in that conference title, which, remember, is the last glimpse that the Heisman voters get. Ballots are due that Monday after that game, so he had a great final statement. And off the field, too, let's not forget, he really led the charge to bring this sport back. Him and Justin Fields led the players' movement back in June, July, August, the movement to play. So that definitely factors in if you want to talk leadership. So both those guys have great resumes.
When you look at a guy last year like Joe Burrow, and I just got to say congratulations again to you, Brett Ciancia, who's joining us live on SicEm365, Heisman voter. You got to vote for the first time last season, and what an honor it is to be able to vote. We see a guy like Joe Burrow. One of the things that really helped him was having such an unbelievable wide receiver core. That right there is the key to most great quarterbacks. When you look at a guy like Davonte Smith, he didn't have that. He's not a quarterback. He's the wide receiver himself. How big is it for a wide receiver to be number 1 right now in the Heisman odds?
Well, yeah, it's definitely incredible. It's something we haven't seen since, I guess, Tim Brown did it in '88 for Notre Dame, and Desmond Howard did it in the early '90s. So we're talking a couple decades here, 30 years almost. So, yeah, it's incredible. And it's a testament to, this becoming more than just a quarterback award. And that's what it should be. It should go to any position. I'm a big believer that in 2009, had I been a voter back then, Ndamukong Suh should have won the thing. So I'm open to all positions, of course. But, yeah, you look at his stats, too. Obviously, he's got the highlights. A lot of one-handed catches, a lot of crazy touchdown plays against LSU and A&M, the punt return in the season finale. And then, when you look at stats, though, too, his yards per game is the most by a big moment every week as the number 1 team. So great resume there. A couple oddities on this race, fun fact-wise. I mean, you have 3 candidates in the top 5 from the same program. Remember, you only get 3 spots on that ballot. So I wonder if there will be voters out there that pick one of the 3 Alabama superstars. They could be stealing votes from each other. And I don't know about having Smith as high a Vegas odds, favorites, because I think they're going to split votes there, him, Jones, and Harris.
So on my fantasy football, NFL fantasy football team, and we keep things pretty college here, but this just is for comparison. I have Aaron Rodgers as my starting quarterback, and the Steelers are my starting defense. So if Aaron Rodgers is playing the Steelers, well, then I don't want to start both of them. I got to root for one guy. So when you got a guy like Mac Jones with Davonte Smith, every time Mac Jones throws a touchdown pass to Davonte Smith, it helps Mac Jones' Heisman hopes, but it also helps Davonte Smith.
That goes back 150 years. This is the first time that you've had all 4 candidates within the same, 400-mile radius there down in the deep South. That usually you have a West Coast guy, a Midwest, maybe a Northeast player, and some of because the Heisman ballots are they're spread across the 6 regions of the country. It's pretty well evenly spread. So that's another element here that I don't know how to predict how that'll happen when you have all the candidates down there concentrated in the South.
So and we're here on Up Tempo with Brett Ciancia, Heisman voter and facilitator of Pick 6 previews. Again, away from this, Kim Mulkey has tested positive for COVID-19. As far as we know right now, she's okay. She has sent a message out on Twitter, but the Baylor and UConn game is canceled Thursday. Coming back to you, though, Brett, when it comes to the eye test of these 4 guys, and I don't want you to give away too much, obviously, but what are a couple of guys and some things that you've seen that have just really blown you away from these Heisman candidates?
Well, yeah, I'll give you one for each guy. Obviously with Smith, we touched on it. It's just his incredible playmaking ability. It looks like he's on a different level of speed. He just barrels past the secondary there, making a lot of one-hand catches in the end zone, has the punt return. So definitely, highlights and stats. Trevor Lawrence, maybe not as gaudy the pass numbers as the other candidates present through the air, but he does bring an element on the ground the others don't. He added 7 touchdowns on the ground in limited action there. So when you factor, touchdowns per plays, he's right up there. Trask, like I said, he's on a record pace passing the ball, passes Joe Burrow's passing stats too, on pace, best since Colt Brennan. And then with Mac Jones, you're talking about the best offense statistically that I've covered in 10 years, and probably statistically ever, the way that Alabama's moving the ball and scoring. So he's the leader of that all-time unit, an all-time record in pass completion right now and yards per attempt. So a lot to like from all 4 guys. It is an odd year with different amounts of games, having 3 candidates on one team, all these factors, all of them in the same geographic footprint. So I think it's a fascinating race, and stay tuned tonight because this could go either way.
So what's your big setup? A Heisman voter. Tell me, in a pandemic, maybe it's a little bit different, but where are you going to watch the show tonight, and will you have your popcorn and soda out and ready?
Yeah, of course. You know how it is. I mean, this is when you think about it, there's only 2 real events left. There's the Heisman tonight and the national title Monday night. So when you're in the thick of the season, when you have 20 games on a given Saturday, it's like drinking from a fire hose. Just so much information. I have my 4 screens set up, all 14 hours a day on Saturdays, watching everything I can, and then throughout the week going back and rewatching and looking at condensed tapes. But when it's just one event tonight, I'm going to soak it all in and enjoy. And hopefully next year the ceremony's back in New York live with all the former winners. It really just adds to the glory of it. So a little bit different this year, but we'll enjoy it nonetheless.
And breaking down this Alabama team you talked about, you maybe haven't covered an offense so prolific, and you got 3 guys that could very well have all gone to New York this year for Heisman contention. And a team like this, how do they compare to Joe Burrow and the LSU offense last year?
Very similar. I mean, we had just talked about LSU being the best ever, and Alabama has passed them in yards per play and, putting up a ton of stats. And one thing to note here amongst these candidates, they didn't have those 3 or 4 non-conference games. A lot of them are filler games against an FCS opponent or a couple non-AQs where you can really run up some Heisman stats, talking like dropping 5 touchdowns against an FCS opponent. Remember, none of that was there. It was all SEC. It was a 10-game slate plus the 11th game of conference titles. So you can argue if they have similar numbers that maybe Alabama this year had the harder path, going 10 conference games compared to maybe some of those filler games propping up some of LSU stats. So it's definitely fascinating. It's hard to compare even within this weird year, but then comparing different years is going to be even harder. But we're seeing 2 of the greatest offenses, I think, in all time.
Brett, thanks so much for coming on. Up Tempo. Again, Brett Ciancia, Heisman voter and facilitator of Pick 6 previews. Last question for you here, and this goes out to all of our guests and callers today on our Bear games. We do this every day where we give out a list of players for our Baylor's second best bracket and then have a little bit of fun on the back end of that. So I'm going to give you this. There's $100 on the line here too. So this is a big hypothetical. You can arm wrestle one Big 12 coach in a restaurant for $100. Which Big 12 coach and which restaurant?
Oof. Let me run through the guys here real quick. I mean, I know it's not Dave Aranda. I talked to him on the phone this year, this preseason. He looks like he's in great shape, and I'm not going to throw it there.
Dave Aranda's yoked. It's a pretty good conglomerate of coaches in the Big 12 from like just a strength standpoint. I've got these guys going up against.
I know
just
Gundy. Gundy's the wrestler. You got Gundy. He's a wrestler. I'm not dealing with him. Who else you got? I might take Neil Brown, West Virginia. Matt Campbell. He's a Division III champ. I'm not going near him. Maybe Patterson too. Maybe Gary Patterson. He can really coach up a defense, but maybe I could take him there.
I'm telling you, so I've got Gary Patterson and I are duking it out at the local Long John Silver's. I just don't. Here's the thing. I'm not the strongest guy, and I feel like a Long John Silver's wouldn't bring a very big crowd. So just in case we lose that $100, I don't want to be embarrassed too bad. But give me Gary Patterson and a Long John Silver's. So you're locking in Gary Patterson. Is that what I'm hearing, Brett?
Yeah, I'm going there for sure. Now, he can outcoach me, but I might win that arm wrestle. We'll see.
Great minds think alike. What restaurant are you arm wrestling Gary Patterson?
Oof. Give me a Fort Worth barbecue. I want to do it in his. I'll give him home turf down there, down the stockyards. I'll meet him down there at one of the barbecue joints in Fort Worth.
Oh, my goodness. We're beating Gary Patterson in an arm wrestle and then sharing a plate of barbecue. I love it. Brett Ciancia, Pick 6 previews, Heisman voter. Brett, thank you so much for coming on Up Tempo today.
Hey, thanks, guys. Anytime, and good luck with the new show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Love having you on. Great to visit with you. I'm Drake Toll alongside Armstrong Sims. We're going to wrap up the final hour of our show coming up next with our Bears and Bus. We've got celebrity birthdays, dead or alive in this day in sports history. This is Uptempo.
It was a late Christmas for Baylor Nation as Dave Aranda and the Bears offense made multiple splash hires last night and into today, adding BYU